Hello and welcome to Be and Blossom, the podcast that celebrates compassionate courage on your journey to cultivate self-esteem and a fertile optimum state. It is when we get out of the unworthiness trance and surrender to being we can truly flourish and bloom. I am your host, mindset educator and fertility coach Auntie Amarissa. I will be sharing with you interviews with experts, professionals and insightful beings, tips and techniques to inspire and motivate us to become the best version of ourselves. Wishing you bliss, bounty and joy. Welcome to this podcast on autonomy over one's own health. I will be interviewing Sheena Louise and I'll be introducing her as soon as I start the interview. I wanted to just talk a little bit about what control we have over our own well-being. We do have the ability to be able to label our thoughts and emotions. I've mentioned this before in the series of podcasts as well. So do take some time to explore what is it that we can do to be able to actually express what is it that we're thinking and what we're feeling. I'm giving you access to a free webinar called Who Lives in Your Head, where I explore the different emotions that we all experience, the common ones, and how the process of labeling them through journaling, through expressing it through the batch flowers, also help to be able to remove that sting. In terms of other tools that you can access, emotional freedom technique is a wonderful technique, it's a wonderful tool that gives you the ability to be able to access those emotions and those thoughts, those memories that you did not know even exists, to be able to help you release that trauma, to help you release that negativity. But in order to release the negativity, first you have to acknowledge it, which is the reason how EFT is set up. There is a setup statement where you actually say what is the negative part and then have that positive and go through all of the different tapping points on your face and body to help you release that negativity by acknowledging it and letting it go, letting it flow. Because often emotions are stuck in the meridian point. So it's a wonderful, gentle way, effective way, evidence. There's a lot of evidence that proves how well EFT works to be able to help you with this. But leave alone that, today we're talking about the autonomy over one's own health. So I do hope you enjoy this talk. And before I end, depending on when you are listening to this podcast, there is an event on the 5th of June which helps you learn about how the Stoic teachings and practices can help you live a flourishing life of mindfulness, creativity and care. So if it resonates, do tune into this. It is on a donation basis as well. Have a look. There is so much tools and resources. And also those of us who are menstruating, do use the power of your menstrual cycle or even the moon to be able to tune in to the times of your month where you can access those emotions and thoughts in a more flow state rather than resistance. It's all about going with the flow state and realizing where your strengths are to be able to amplify them. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of a break now from these podcast episodes, and I'll be coming back in autumn with a wonderful lineup of interviews and different resources and techniques and tools that I'll be sharing with you. But for now, I really hope you enjoy this interview, and we'll be talking with Sheena about the yin and yang, Shiva and Shakti. But the key is how yoga is the gift to the present moment, and how it enables you to be and blossom. A joyful being, Sheena Louise, and her background is in yoga and holistic therapy, including closing the bone ceremony and ritual, which contains postnatal massage. And today she's going to talk about the autonomy of looking after one's health. So I let Sheena introduce herself.
Hello, Artie. Hello, everybody. My name is Sheena, and as Artie says, my background is in holistic therapy and yoga, and specifically working with women and in the realm of women's health. So I first started my holistic training about 15 years ago when I studied Reiki with a friend. And I then went on to study massage, holistic massage. And from that, I just kept finding avenues to explore holistic therapy further, feeling like it was definitely a path that was calling for me to travel, and always feeling a calling to work with women. I studied my first yoga teacher training 6 years ago in elemental yoga, which is a really beautiful combination of traditional Chinese medicine theory and hatha yoga practices, and the combination of the two and how you put them together to form a practice that relates to the seasons, the outer seasons of the year. Coming from the perspective that every season has a corresponding element and organ and system of the body. And so at a very basic level, if you work to the season that you're in, so for example, working with spring and the element of space, we're working with the organs of the liver and the gallbladder, and the energy of spring that kind of characterizes spring is all about that shifting up and out. And so we use practices that work with the meridians, the lines of energy in the body that serve the liver and the gallbladder, to help those organs to come into an optimal function so that you can be in a good state of balance in your health and well-being. So, for example, in spring, we would use practices that include twisting, inversions, balances, to help that upward flow of energy, and then to cultivate, to use that energy in its form. So then kind of at the height of the season, we take the form of these beautiful inversions and balances. And that really led me to feel a great sense of pulling together lots of things that I'd been interested in intuitively and been reading about and studying. The pulling together specifically of yoga and Chinese medicine felt really powerful, really potent. And when I started to go through this cycle of moving with the seasons in my own practice, I just noticed such an increase in my levels of health and well-being. And I'd already started studying in the city that I live in Bristol, with two teachers, Rachel Fleming and Marinella Bonelli, who were working within the realm of womb yoga, the teachings that come from Uma Dinsmore-Tuli. And so when I did my teacher training, I'd already had some experience of these womb yoga teachings. It was already quite embodied within me to start to think about my inner cycles as well. So as well as looking at the outer cycles of the year, to start feeling the inner cycles within us. And as women, the most obvious that we often think of is the monthly or menstrual cycle. But even if that cycle is paused, or if we've moved out of a menstrual cycle, we still tend to find that we have this rhythm that comes in line with the cycles of the moon. And so I then studied womb yoga and did a further teacher training with Uma, which just again kind of further brought together and tied in all these bits of teachings and understandings about how we can really come to be in touch with our own inner wisdom. And once we're listening to that intuitive wisdom that's within all of us, we can really start to understand what we need for ourselves. And that puts us in a position that's much more powerful in terms of being able to curate our best level of health and well-being in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like what you said about the seasons and how they relate to our own cyclical changes and going with the flow, which is really relevant at this moment in time, especially with what's going on, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I think while we're all in our own houses and not so able to access things that perhaps we might usually, it becomes, yeah, like you say, even more relevant to be able to tune in to ourselves, because essentially this is a great reminder that at a basic level, when we strip away all the outer stuff and all the distractions that our lives are often filled with, what we have is ourselves and our own inner voice, and that is there for all of us. And sometimes it takes some unraveling and some peeling away. And I think that the greatest lesson for me when I did my first teach training, each day we would start with a yang training, a dynamic, active training in the morning, of moving through postures and practices that are perhaps what people would recognize more readily as the yoga that they see presented in the world. But then every evening we would move into a yin practice, which is more about exploring the feminine aspect of energy. It's more about practicing fewer postures and holding them for longer and coming into stillness with them. And when you're in that stillness, you have no choice but to listen to what comes up. There's nothing else to distract you, and it can be quite uncomfortable. And for me, certainly in my teacher training, that was where I took the greatest learning. It was unexpected for me. I hadn't kind of realized that was where the potent medicine would be for me, but that was where it was. And so I think I've taken that forward quite a lot into my teachings, and even in the classes that I teach that I would describe as yang, in terms of them being in the morning and being kind of flowing sequences that keep us moving. Still, there's always that restorative element of being able to draw back into stillness so that we have the opportunity to come within and listen to that voice.
I completely resonate with that, because when I came to your class as well, that's exactly how I felt. It was a restorative class and it was in the evening, but there was a very nice flow and rhythm to it, and it was very empowering to feel that connection. And then the way you guided it, and it was more guided rather than instructed, and it just had a flow to it. And your use of instruments and your voice and what you were saying, it all kind of touched a part of me that was ready to come out. So I think you hold, and especially in your surroundings, as we can all see in this video as well, it's there is already a peace and calmness that's emanating from you anyway, but even from the place that you hold your practice in, because that's your value. These are your values that you're allowing yourself to manifest in your classes. So it's really, really worthwhile to attend one of your classes, just to experience what you're explaining.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad that was what came through for you when you came along. It seemed to me, I think, when I did my trainings, and then as I took that into my own practice and my own life, developing that understanding of the energies that are present within all of us and within all things, that energy of the masculine and the feminine, the yang and the yin, or the Shiva and the Shakti, how everything holds one of those energies in dominance. And of course, they're present within all, we all as beings have both masculine and feminine energy within us. And it tends to be that one comes out more strongly than the other, but we all have both. And they're both as important, as vital as each other. And the way that we live, certainly in the Western world, in the culture that I come from, the yang energy, the masculine energy, is really dominant. So the whole thing of our days being ruled by a schedule with rigid timings is masculine energy, having to get somewhere at a certain time and do a thing, and then get to somewhere else and do another thing. it's all held very rigidly. And to be able to draw back from that and create a space where you can come inward and come into that feminine aspect of energy, of stillness and quiet, just allows space for everything else to flow and function more fully.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And I love the way you explained about Shiva and Shakti. I really resonate with that. I read a lot about the Hindu scriptures, and it's as a child, my earliest memory was actually playing with my 4-year-old cousin, and I was Parvati, not Shakti, but it's the same thing, and he was Shiva. So it's that kind of, from a young age, or from conception, we kind of growing with that duality, so to say. When we get to like a ripe age, or when we are right where we are right now, it's extremely important to feel that balance, because as I said, one dominates the other, and we'd only have that stillness when we have both in equipoise, in that kind of equilibrium. So, and I felt that, when you come to your classes and having this conversation, when people are listening to this as well, you can feel that kind of calmness, that serenity that you're talking about. And the more we can practice yoga and these different holistic exercises and tools, it helps us to go back within and make that relationship with our inner self, which we've forgotten until this coronavirus came up, that we've been forced because we don't have anything else to do.
Yeah, and I've loved the way that I've heard it being described as the great stillness. It feels like one big exercise in yin, in drawing inwards and being quiet and listening to that feminine aspect, because we have been so out there for such a long time in so many ways, being out of our homes for so many hours a day, and out in the world, and not just physically, but also even when we are at home, we're online. The thing of social media, which is such a blessing to keep us in contact, and it brings so many positive elements to our lives, but it does tend to be out of balance.
I agree.
In terms of how much time we're spending on it, or how much we're representing ourselves in that realm. So again, just drawing in and having that time to settle and soften feels like a great, as in with a capital G, the great balancing.
Yeah, love that. That's fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you for going through all of these aspects. And as a summary in terms of positive harmony, because I can already feel the positive harmony, it feels that you've covered quite a few, salient points there. And if I may, it seems like the major point that you're making is to go within that inner stillness, to gain that power, so that we can live a life aligned to good health. Those are the 3 points that stood out for me. Is there anything else that you would like to add to take away? Anybody that wants to take away from this lovely conversation we've had?
I think that you summed it up really nicely, and that for anyone who is wondering where to start to make those changes, that the most profound thing from my own experience is just to be able to sit with your breath, that whatever else is going on, if you can find a space to sit or to lie down, or even just to stand still for a moment and just notice yourself breathing in and breathing out, and to do that as many times a day as you can is a wonderful beginning.
Yeah, so that helps you to bring yourself into alignment with good health anyway. It's being present. And not only physical health, I would say, because it being full moon yesterday, there was a lot of energies going on. I think mentally, anchoring back to your breath really helps that clarity that we were looking for. Because as you said, with social media and with all the pressures and the overwhelm, the word that comes up to me is just, I'm so overwhelmed. So focusing back on the breath will help you not only physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. Thank you. I think that in itself is the essence of what we're talking about, isn't it? Coming back to the moment.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And what guided me into yoga practice in the first place was I'd started practicing yoga in my late teens, early 20s. But the point in my life at which it really deepened and became a root, like a real anchor for me, was when I had my second child, when I was pregnant, and then for a long period after he was born, I had a long period of depression, and I felt very intuitively that taking medication wasn't the right thing for me at that point. I'd done that previously in my life as a teenager, and it hadn't ever, for me, got down into what was going on. It just kind of put a mask on the surface. And I felt very intuitively that I needed to use yoga and look at nutrition and natural remedies, natural therapies. And my yoga practice at that point was really what carried me through and gave me that gift of the present moment, to know that whatever else was going on and however I might be feeling in a wider sense, actually I could come in to this moment, to this pose, to this breath, and feel that stillness and that calm, and know my own power. Know myself.
That's beautiful. That's exactly what it is. And the more yoga you do, you know what poses your body needs and your mind needs, which I think is fascinating, because it's tuning into that present moment and what you need at that moment in time. And your classes help to induce that power of, well, that empowerment, that intuitiveness, that go within and see what you're seeking and manifest it.
Well, I really hope so. That's my that's my wish.
Yeah. So you are doing online classes at the moment. So if anybody needs to contact you, we'll add your details. So it'll be lovely to be able to have that experience.
Thank you.
Enjoy that present moment. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Lovely. Thank you, Auntie.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Please do not forget to rate, review and subscribe for future episodes, and also let others know that we exist. If there are any links that I mentioned in the podcast that you're unable to view, visit my website artiamarissa.com under the tab of podcasts. Wishing you bliss, bounty and joy.